is true. He was paid to read reports, find the patterns sifting through. As he read the data, the patterns did emerge. Patterns that were clear both before and since the surge. Patterns of abuse of the most horrific kind. Gunning down civilians out of view and out of mind. Gunning down the opposition in the middle of the night. Sending off the scholars to be tortured out of sight. Sometimes you need desperate measures when you live in desperate times. Private Manning's all he was, looking at war crimes. He wondered what to do to allow the dead to speak. He finally decided to contact WikiLeaks. Now it's all out on the table and everybody knows. The emperor is naked, he's not wearing any clothes. Now Adrian Lavelle has to live within his skin. He stabbed Bradley in the back, called the cops and turned him in. But not before the soldier took 500,000 files. If you printed all the pages, they'd stretch on for miles. Evidence against the state, right from the horse's mouth. Machinations in the west, bombings in the south. A treasure trove of details for all the globe to see. How much they need to lie and kill for democracy. How many drone strikes have hit villages, leaving everyone to die. They blamed on someone else, the official lie, not I. How many coups have been plotted by ambassadors who say that free and fair elections be the order of the day. Now it's all out on the table and everybody knows. The emperor is naked, he's not wearing any clothes. Genie's out of the bottle, and they're trying to stuff it back and stop it from illuminating everything we lack, such as the rule of law or playing by the book. Look, you can read it, it's right here. The ship of state is run by crooks, and they vilify the messengers, call them every name for daring to blow the whistle on the nature of their game. The game of taking lives and endangering the rest, in order for the wealthy few to do what they do best. Dominate the world for the corporate elite. But now their cover's blown from their head down to their feet. And now the stars and stripes is looking much more like a rag. The lid is off the box, the cat's out of the bag. Now it's all out on the table and everybody knows. The emperor is naked, he's not wearing any clothes. It's all out on the table and everybody knows. The emperor is naked, he's not wearing any clothes.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending. This is, let's see. Oh, where's the, are you guys hearing anything out there? I'm not getting any reading on this microphone thing. Come on, why is there nothing? Well, I don't know. Anyway, Paula seems to be indicating that she heard me say that, because they're in the comment in the chat window there's another little comment about that, but it looks audio very, very low. Let's see. Oh, we'll max it out and see. Check. I don't know what the heck is going on here. There's no reading at all. But there's static. We don't want static. Why is there static? Well, we'll just play another song, and try yelling, see if that helps. I don't know. That last one was obviously a song about Chelsea Manning, formerly known as Private Manning. Bradley Manning, Private Manning, either way. And this is History in Song Part 6, and we're talking about the 2010 through 2012 in this episode, and going back to 2010, here in Portland, the most racist police force in the United States killed 2 more black men.
Portland is a town that's in the news much of the time. There are a lot of vegans and there's very little crime. It's a nice, safe place to live. Folks ride bicycles a lot. The winters aren't so cold and the summers aren't so hot. They build houses out of cob. They hang out in the park, where you needn't worry about walking after dark. There are lots of homeless people, but they don't hurt no one. Just be careful of the boys in blue playing with their guns. Yeah, watch out for the cops. 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 You can hang out with the punks with the piercings and tattoos. You can eat out at a food truck any neighborhood you choose. You can dance to Balkan music while you drink a microbrew, chilling in a gay bar with the mayor and his crew. But be careful what you do, be prepared to get some flack, especially for those who may be male, young and black. The fact is you do better in Sweet Home, Alabama. You're safer there on the old streets of Birmingham. Yeah, watch out for the cops. 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 Full of roses, there are flowers everywhere, but for others they've got prisons with some nice electric chairs. You can go downtown, ride the buses there for free, but you never know when you'll get a DWP. A town full of progressives, but such a rotten bunch of cops. Who knows who'll get shot at the next routine traffic stop? When you live in a place like Portland, where they tend to act this way, you can just join the police force instead of the KKK. Yeah, watch out for the cops. 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 Watch out for the cops.
All right. Now that should be better, right? Is that better? I went into, I feel so terribly technologically adept. I went into Control Panel, found Audio Devices, and noticed that the input level was very low, and I increased it, and that represents the pinnacle of my knowledge about audio technology right there. But it has been exercised, and good. Sounds better. All right. So we are. Then it was in 2010 when the massive oil spill disaster off the coast of Texas, Louisiana, began.
We came to Canada a long time ago, but the Brits showed no mercy. We had to go. Our cities fell and we set sail from the shores of La Nouvelle France out into the gale. In Louisiana we started again, fished and farmed, made a life here and then. We celebrated a new day and we sang Laissez les bon temps brûler. Laissez les bon temps brûler. All we wanted was to be left alone on a patch of paradise that we could call our own. Fish the Gulf, dance and pray, but when the revolution came, we went and joined the fray. And when we came back from the awful fight, the Battle of Baton Rouge gave us nightmares at night. But we got the fiddles out to play, and we sang Laissez les bon temps brûler. Laissez les bon temps brûler. We fished the seas, and when we came back, it was time for fée d'odo and all the crawfish you could pack. La grande dérangement to memory that had long ago been traded for joie de vivre. The great upheaval far in the past, now we'd found a new world we all hoped would last. Cajun music there by the bay, laissez les bon temps brûler. Laissez les bon temps brûler. When the oil companies began to drill, we did our best to get along. We kept fishing still. It was hard, but we persevered. Brought our catch to market like we'd done for 200 years. Some went to Texas to work the oil, but most of us stayed here on this Cajun soil. We'd work the Gulf, come home and say, laissez les bon temps brûler. Laissez les bon temps brûler. We survived Katrina and so much more, but when the oil started gushing out on the ocean floor, I guess it's time to say goodbye. There's no life here for a fisherman when all the fish do is die. Maybe California is where I'll land. I've heard there's still fish there beyond the golden sand. But I can only cry to hear some fool say, laissez les bon temps brûler. Laissez les bon temps brûler. Laissez les bon temps brûler.
And it was just a couple of months after that disaster unfolded. I guess maybe around the time it got capped, somewhere around that time was in 2010 was the siege on the Mavi Marmara and several other boats that were coming into Gaza, attempting to break the blockade, and friends of mine were on the Mavi Marmara and told me many harrowing stories, and I wrote this song.
In 48 they were driven out at the point of a machine gun. Families fled in fear to Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. They fled around the globe, firmly held in terror's grip, and about 1 million refugees ended up in the Gaza Strip. In 1967, the IDF moved in, and the refugees in Gaza became refugees again. Settlers took their farmland, soldiers took the ports, and the people were surrounded by military forts. In 2007, they cut them off completely. No access to the borders, no access to the sea. The world began to see this unavoidable stamp. The most crowded place on earth was now a concentration camp. Israeli jet fighters bombed Gaza from the air, and they kept out the supplies needed to rebuild and repair. They kept out the convoys of humanitarian aid, anemic children going hungry, crushed and burned in bombing raids from around the world. Good people tried to get across the border to the other side. Almost all of them were turned away, deported back to Turkey, Jordan, France, the USA. They were barred from ever coming back. Adam and Huwaida decided on a different tack. They loaded up a boat, managed to get through. That's when activists in Istanbul decided what to do. Armed with food and wheelchairs and prosthetic limbs for victims of the bombing raids to wear. They packed cement by the ton. They had a few kitchen knives, but not a single gun. They were determined to reach the bay, to break the siege of Gaza and not be turned away. As they left Turkish waters, everybody wished them well. As for what would happen next, only the apartheid state could tell. All aboard the Mavi Marmara, sailing toward Goliath's kingdom, armed with nothing but a stone. All aboard the Mavi Marmara, tell the children of Jerusalem, you are not alone. 700 people on board this Turkish ferry. They were 60 miles from the shore, out in the open sea, in international waters, with no plans for turning back. That's when Netanyahu told his soldiers to attack. They came down from helicopters, fired guns from Zodiacs. They shot some people in their heads and others in their backs. The captain raised a white flag high into the air, but the soldiers kept on shooting beneath the floodlights' glare. The soldiers kept on shooting. It was a free fire zone. So many dead and wounded, just how many isn't known. So many dead and wounded, blood flowing on the floor. The soldiers kept on shooting 60 miles from the shore. Medics tried to treat the wounded, all they could do was watch them bleed. The soldiers wouldn't let them get the urgent help they needed. Mass troopers held their hostages, the Navy towed the ship, just for trying to sail to the Gaza Strip. All aboard the Mavi Marmara, sailing toward Goliath's kingdom, armed with nothing but a stone. All aboard the Mavi Marmara, tell the children of Jerusalem, you are not alone. Every laptop every camera and cell phone. This is what Goliath does to those who dare to throw a stone. The ghost of the Exodus is shouting at the sky, but Netanyahu isn't listening. He's just watching people die. For days nobody knew just what happened on that boat, because everyone was held in jail and dead men do not float. All the world will remember what happened on that night, and to end the siege of Gaza, more will go and join the fight. All aboard the Rachel Corrie, sailing toward Goliath's kingdom, armed with nothing but a stone. All aboard the Rachel Corrie, tell the children of Jerusalem, you are not alone. All aboard the Mavi Marmara, sailing toward Goliath's kingdom, armed with nothing but a stone. All aboard the Mavi Marmara, tell the children of Jerusalem, you are not alone.
So there seems to be a fairly significant delay in my computer. I don't know. I wonder how much delay there was between that song ending and me speaking. If somebody in the chat window can let me know, that'd be great. It's like experimentation with primitive technology or something. But my computer sucks, basically. If there's anybody out there that has an extra few $100, feel free to donate it to me, and I'll buy a new laptop. 20-second, I'm told. There was a 20-second delay. Okay, hopefully if I avoid opening Skype windows for the rest of the show, the delay will not be so dramatic or will lessen. I'd love to know if that actually happens. See if we can make this software work with my primitive computer. Just 30 seconds is what Paula says. Yeah, that's way too much. There shouldn't be any delay. 10 seconds from this. So depending on who you're listening, who's listening on what computer in what country, there seems to be a 10, 20, or 30 second delay. Oh, Daniel says 3 second. Really? 3 second delay? All right. Well, that's good. If I were listening to a radio show with a 30 second delay after each, I don't know. Maybe it's like a chance to meditate or something, but it's not exactly anything like, you get fined for dead air if you did this on a terrestrial station, I hear. Anyway, moving on to the winter of 2011, a few months after that last incident, you had the beginnings of the Arab Spring with all its pros and cons. It has been a uprising, certainly in 2011, that was throughout the Arab-speaking world, and quite impressive and very reminiscent of 1848 in Europe, I think.
Was living on a wire, went and bought some paint thinner, and he he set himself on fire. Word spread through the region, soon you'd hear it same. Proud and desperate people going up in flames. Sometimes windows open, sometimes the floor it creaks, but no one knew what would happen in only a few weeks when the dictator ran away. When the dictator ran away. Tried to hold a march for the immolated dead. Police met them there with truncheons, bullets to the head. People headed to the Capitol, they would not be deterred. Sometimes this is just what happens to a dream deferred. The police kept up the attack, thousands wounded, hundreds killed. With blood the streets were covered, with gas the air was filled. But the people held their ground, Tunisia's daughters and their sons. One day the cops had enough to just put down their guns when the dictator ran away. When the dictator ran away. Now someone had to deal with this rebellious riffraff, so Ben Ali called a meeting of his chiefs of staff. He said these terrorists have decided to go out on the attack. It's time for you, the army, to take our country back. It's time for you, the army, to go and make a stand. Show these terrorists that we are in command. Time to gun these criminals down. That's what he said, now go. The general got his orders, and the general said no. When the dictator ran away. When the dictator ran away. Ben Ali got in a plane, tried to go to France, but he was a hot potato, so he did a little dance. Ended up in Jeddah to live there in exile, while his fellow warlords shiver from the Tigris to the Nile. All across Arabia, you can hear them talk and sing. Those who dare throw off their shackles, let's shout, let freedom ring. Where we'll be by next year is for anyone to say. Many will recall where they were on the day when the dictator ran away. When the dictator ran away.
And of course, at right around the same time, across the ocean, there was things were stirring in the state of Wisconsin.
My ancestors came to Wisconsin. They came here from the east. They believed the greatest person was no greater than the least. And this state, it was founded on the grounds that we're all free, and no one should ever suffer from the bonds of slavery. When the call went out from Kansas, there were many volunteers who left their families in Wisconsin to free their shackled peers. They stood and fought together, and therein lay the key. They stood shoulder to shoulder.
That was weird. Sorry about that. This song is not there in its entirety, so that's really adding unprofessionalism onto unprofessionalism. But hey, it's the internet. Moving on from Wisconsin, which I sort of didn't just sing about, a couple months later, in the midst of the uprisings and the Arab world continuing, was a tremendous tsunami with all sorts of repercussions.
It was only last week that I walked past the water. I remembered last summer and the candles we made. The whole town was there beside the river on that warm August night of the lantern parade. With the breeze on our backs, we walked home together. We unrolled our futons when the night was through. Oh, Ji-chan was sleeping, so we tried not to wake him. That's how life was in Minami Sanriku. It was only last week that I came home from school. My parents were working, but my grandpa was there. He threw a ball in my hand, looking ever so cool, in his corduroy jacket and his wavy white hair. I said, "Hello, Oji-chan," and I threw him the ball. It went kinda like that for the whole afternoon. The sun had gone down when we heard Oka-san call. We went inside to eat in Minami Sanriku. It was only last week I was sitting in class with the rest of the kids on top of the hill.
Weird, and I don't know what's going on. Songs get cut off, I don't know, and that's terrible. But So it's sort of like one of those advertisements where they're selling you an album or something like that, and they refuse to play the entire songs for some reason. Who knows if this whole song is there? But it was a couple months after that disaster that I was just about to sing about in that verse that got cut off, that there was a U.S. Navy raid in Pakistan.
It was a commando operation of courage and skill. Navy SEAL helicopters flew in for the kill. They had a firefight, and they shot him in the head. Now the mastermind of terror, Bin Laden, is dead. For all those who love freedom, it's a glorious day. In D.C. and New York, they're chanting USA. Fatherless children clutching teddy bears, legless veterans with catheters and wheelchairs can all rejoice that the deed is done and the war on terror has been won. Now orphans of Afghanistan can look at the skies. They can fill the air with joyful cries as the call to prayer rings from shattered domes. They can all run out from the rubble of their homes. Now they know their parents didn't die in vain when they heard the roar of a jet plane. Now the whole village except the 115 who died that morning unknown and unseen can all rejoice that the deed is done and the war on terror has been won. Now folks can have a party in old Baghdad, and the people of Fallujah can all be glad. Now they know there is a reason for their poisoned farms and for the babies born without heads or arms. The widows need not wonder where their husbands went. They can look forward to the future in their tents. Now all the refugees, whatever country they're in Syria, Jordan, or Michigan, can all rejoice that the deed is done and the war on terror has been won. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
And anybody who by then had any fantasies about the president being a pacifist had those fantasies smashed.
I remember in 2008, a Democrat became head of state. His party won the Congress too. Then we watched to see what they would do. Vague promises and hopeful signs. Just try to read between the lines. These things take time, that's understood. And I know that patience can be good. And I'm no genius, but I'm not dumb. And I'm still waiting for the change to come. Many thought it had arrived. We felt lucky to have survived all those years of right-wing rule, using fear and hatred as the fuel. Now we're on the other side, and we're still swimming against the tide. The wars go on, good people die, missiles rain down from the sky. Once I dreamed you were my best chum, but I'm still waiting for the change to come. The prisons fill up with the poor, victims of the same drug war. Bankers fly in first-class seats while families move into the streets across the country. Schools close down in another bankrupt town. Oil sits on the seafloor, and now you want to drill for more. And like everybody where I'm from, I'm still waiting for the change to come. I don't know, but I'd like to think we can pull each other from the brink. I've heard it said with a sigh, this nation is too young to die. But the system's broke, and what I glean is change must come by other means. Can you hear the whispers in the air that what we need is Tahrir Square? Until then, in Washington, I'll be waiting for the change to come. Still waiting for the change to come.
Meanwhile, not only did the change not come, but the fracking exponentially increased.
There was a knock one morning. A man was standing at my door. He said, "Hello, I'm from Halliburton. Have you heard of us before? We'd like to lease your backyard to drill for natural gas. It's called hydraulic fracturing, and it is the very pass for a clean energy future above the Marcellus stone. Plus, we'll give you lots of money and a new mobile phone." I said, "You are a corporate crook. I don't believe the things you tell, and you can drive right off my property and then go straight to hell. No fracking way, no fracking way. I don't trust corporate salesmen, whatever they may say. No fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way." My neighbor was out of work and things were looking grim, so when the fracking guy came knocking, he had better luck with him. The company said, "Don't worry, everything will just be fine, so just sign your name right here, sir, on this dotted line." Pretty soon the water was tasting pretty dire. One day I lit a match and the water caught on fire. I thought about a lawsuit, then stumbled upon the fact that fracking is exempted from the Clean Water Act. No fracking way, no fracking way. Is this how democracy works here in the USA? No fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way. As if the situation weren't sufficiently unattractive, we tested the water and found it was radioactive. Now my property is worthless and there's a tumor in my brain. Half of my neighbors are sick, the rest are just in pain. Maybe I should take the money, move off to live somewhere, but all the places I look at, they're fracking there. Our choices now are simple: lose that which we hold dear, or communicate the message in a way that's unstoppably clear. No fracking way, no fracking way. Tell these frackers to frack off, both tomorrow and today. No fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way.
Yeah, in the chat room, Paula says, "Isn't it convenient that fracking actually sounds like a swear word?" Which is of course, one of the great advantages to opposing fracking, that the PR for fracking is challenging from the very outset for the frackers, because, well, it's how it goes sometimes. So, and then also 2011, summer of 2011 saw the arrest once again of Keith McHenry and various other activists with Food Not Bombs, this time in Orlando, Florida.
In the land of Minnie, Mouse, and Mickey, things are getting icky since the municipality of Orlando, Florida passed a moratoria against feeding hungry people in their city. The mayor said with a scoff, we'd all be better off without these food terrorists lurking like a shark. So he did declare, Samaritans beware, no more feeding hungry people in the park. And if you do, you'd better raise your bail, 'cause you'll be fined $500 and sent to jail. Yes, if you do, you'd better raise your bail, 'cause you'll be fined $500 and sent to jail. There are many things you can do when you're passing through that are much more acceptable than that. Go on amusement rides, eat things that are fried, buy each one of your kids a little hat. You can stay in a hotel, pretend everything is swell, go to SeaWorld and hear the seals bark. But whatever else you have in mind, you will be in a bind if you feed the hungry people in the park. And if you do, you'd better raise your bail, 'cause you'll be fined $500 and sent to jail. Yes, if you do, you'd better raise your bail, 'cause you'll be fined $500 and sent to jail. A good time, have a good vacation, then retire. But if you want to stir up trouble, if you deign to pop the bubble and try to feed the hungry people of the Shire, in such a public place we can't suffer such disgrace, though the logic may seem a little stark. What would the neighbors say? Where will the children play if you keep feeding hungry people in the park? And if you do, you'd better raise your bail, 'cause you'll be fined $500 and sent to jail. Yes, if you do, you'd better raise your bail, 'cause you'll be fined $500 and sent to jail.
And a few weeks after those arrests was the worst massacre in Western European post-war history.
They say he acted alone for a Europe white and free, a sick and twisted man from an otherwise sane society, the image of Aryan blonde, almost iridescent, with a manifesto quoting from the Crusades to the present. But he stood on many shoulders, of this we can be sure, a millennia of xenophobes who slaughter to be pure, since before the first crusade, when a mighty Christian band hacked and stabbed and burned their way to the Holy Land. They say he acted alone, but in his mind he was another of those who came before him, his mighty Christian brothers, on the road covered in armor and served their masters well. They vowed to chastity, they vowed to kill the infidel. They marauded west and east, and the name of Christendom. They killed Jews, Muslims, pagans, fellow Christians by the thousand in the name of Jesus. From the Jordan to the Rhine, the red cross on their chest plates, their terrifying sign. In the shadow of the Knights Templar, in the shadow of the Knights Templar. They say he acted alone. No one said this of the Pope, whose victims were left burning or hanging from a rope. The Lord's own Inquisition, for 6 centuries, the ethnic cleansing of a continent, a Christian tyranny. European Jews and European Muslims led the Christian Caliphate to be protected by the Sultans. For 500 years they prospered beneath the Turkish sky. For those left behind, convert or die. In the shadow of the Knights Templar, in the shadow of the Knights Templar. Living in a country where the xenophobic right is the second biggest party, and he's living on a continent that is overrun with prime ministers who tell us multiculturalism is done. They brag of their traditions, they swell with Christian pride for the civilization built on genocide. Anders Breivik pulled the trigger, but he did not write the play. That script was being written 1,000 years ago today. In the shadow of the Knights Templar, in the shadow of the Knights Templar. Alone, and they want us to believe that moderating rhetoric is the best we can achieve. But moderating rhetoric will bring us nowhere near to the understanding that the problem is right here. European empires, European greed, European Christians poison European seeds, European racists running European states, European tolerance for European hate. In the shadow of the Knights Templar, in the shadow of the Knights Templar.
Then within a few weeks of that, several major cities in England were on fire.
Another man, they have that kind of knack, and it may not be coincidental that he was black. He was sitting in his car, they say he might have had a gun. What we know for sure is he had 5 kids, daughters and sons. Now he can't have a family, he'll never see his friends. His neighbors understand what kind of message this sends. Some life is worth less, some life is worth more. You don't have to be a mathematician to know the score. Some people get shot just for being who they are. Some people play with iPads, take vacations, drive in fancy cars. Some people go to universities, some people do not. It depends on where you were born and how much money you got. The government cuts their spending, widening the divide, then reacts with disbelief when they face the rising tide of anger at the cuts of the futures that they rob. With each day so many have to live without a job. Now the flames are getting hotter, maybe coming to your town. London is burning down. Cameron went on TV in his suit and tie. If the riots asked the question, then this was his reply. We'll arrest these hooligans, these people without shame. They are only criminals, and it's only criminals to blame. Morals have decayed among the peasants' ranks, so let us lock them up while we bail out the banks. When that's the way they look at it, it's not very hard to watch things fall apart in this house of cards. Now the flames are getting hotter, maybe coming to your town. kids have too much freedom, and all this is just a sign that we need more policemen to teach them some respect. Well, if that's your line, then I know just what you can expect. The class will be repeated until the lesson has been learned. All you need is some injustice to make your cities burn. All you need is the perception, whether or not it's true, that most of us will never live the way you do. Now the flames are getting hotter, maybe coming to your town. London is burning down.
And a month after that, I landed in New York City, and then the next day did a gig in Brooklyn. The next day there was a protest on Wall Street in Zuccotti Park that I attended, and then things got spreading.
Because this is where they buy the politicians. Because this is where power has its seat. Because 99% of us are suffering at the mercy of the madmen on this street. Because all of us are victims of class warfare being waged on us by the 1%. Because these greedy banksters rob the country, leaving us without the means to pay the rent. Because the last time that we had a decent government was about 1932. Because we the people are supposed to run this country, but instead it's all run by and for the few. Because now we know the rich do not pay taxes, but when they need a hand it's us who bail them out. Because we suspected we lived in a plutocracy, but suddenly of late there is no doubt. So we're gonna stay right here. We're gonna stay right here. Because both my parents lost their savings. Because I have never opened an account. Because the interest on my credit card just doubled, and now I can't pay the minimum amount. Because these budget cuts are just immoral, that our schools as overcrowded as they are. Because there are no buses where I live, but I can't afford to drive a car. Because so many of us don't have health insurance. The rest of us have it, but it sucks. Because the rich are flying in their private jets, while the rest of us are slogging through the muck. Because capitalism isn't working. This system has just failed to produce. Because the 1% are prospering, while the rest of us just suffer their abuse. So we're gonna stay right here. We're gonna stay right here. Because it has been demonstrated amply that the winners are the ones who stick around. Because this world should belong to everyone, not just the banksters who had smashed it to the ground. Because we've noticed voting doesn't change things when the politicians are mostly millionaires. Because we're learning how to stand up like Tunisians, like they did in Tahrir Square. A young man named Mohammed Bouazizi struck a match that lit up all the earth. And all around the world the spell was broken, and a movement for the future future was in birth. Because there's only so much the rich can feed us before we figure out which side we're on. Because we've learned if we want our liberation, it will only come if we stay here till the rising of the dawn. So we're gonna stay right here. We're gonna stay right here. Because corporations are not people, and we can't just let them choose. Because if we leave our fate to them, then all of us will surely lose. Because the climate clock is ticking, and we can't just leave our world behind. Because corporate rule isn't working, and it's time for humans' hearts and minds. Because you can't take it with you. Because the rich just do not care. Because it doesn't matter how much you make, but how much you can share. Because these moments don't come often. Because we want truly to be free. Because we know what really matters. Something called society. So we're gonna stay right here. 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 We're gonna stay right here.
Then a few months later, after the Occupy Wall Street movement began to fizzle out, and of course was the victim of massive amounts of police brutality and infiltration, and then the NATO protests and NATO meetings were happening in Chicago, in the town of Mayor Ram Bo, and the son of an Irgun terrorist who runs Chicago much the same way that Daley ran Chicago before, with an army of riot police ready to attack anybody who's out of line. And when Occupy came to Chicago, nobody was ever allowed to set up a tent in the first place, and stood on the sidewalk through the cold Chicago winter. And then when spring came and the NATO meetings were happening, and Occupy activists and anti-war activists and others from around the country were planning to come, and did come, of course, a few thousand at least. There were many thousands more riot cops, and including some that infiltrated an Occupy group and framed a bunch of kids basically for terrorism, and they're in prison today. And I wrote a song about them.
To articulate their message and together make a toast to the new schemes they're hatching, to the next regime they'll change, to the next nation they'll turn into a bombing range. They hyped it on the radio, newspapers and TV, the anarchists who come and destroy the city. The anarchists who come and the undercover cops, the old Chicago Red Squad and their psyops. It's the cops who bought the petrol, the cops who bought the cans, the cops who brought it home, the cops who made the plans, so they got the terrorists they wanted. Now they're doing fine, they got the terrorists and they got the headlines. I wanna know who, I wanna know who is the so they say. This is liberation, and in case you are unsure, the NSA will tell you if your thoughts might be impure. While the generals fly their Air Force all the way across the ocean, they'll build military bases, drop bombs of all description. But if you drive from Florida to the city of Chicago to pay a little visit to Mayor Rombo, watch out for the cops who bring home the gasoline, and your apartment becomes a crime scene. I wanna know who, wanna know who is the terrorist? Wanna know who, wanna know who is the terrorist? Meanwhile in Afghanistan, a village has been hit, a wedding party transformed into a pit, transformed into a graveyard for children, women, men, transformed into a graveyard for empire again, a place where terrorists are born with every drone attack, a graveyard for the Midwest boys never coming back, a graveyard for society, a graveyard for ideals, a place to bury all the hearts of anyone who feels. And at the meeting in Chicago, they'll talk of women's rights, they'll talk about the terrorists they've got within their sights, the terrorists abroad, the terrorists so near, the terrorists who grew up in a suburb around here. I wanna know who, wanna know who is the terrorist? Wanna know who, wanna know who is the terrorist? Meanwhile in Afghanistan, more protesters shot down by NATO troops who had to prove it's them who run this town, by NATO troops who have to show they are in control, while it all comes crashing down in the countries they stole. NATO troops committing war crimes every day, ruling over nations in the old imperial way. The lying generals in Chicago with their satellites and tanks, taking orders from their bosses, the oil men and banks taking orders from their bosses, looking suitably enraged at terror, foreign and domestic, real or staged, whether led on by informants or just pissed off by the war. The terrorists are meeting behind closed doors. I wanna know who, wanna know who is the terrorist? Wanna know who, wanna know who is the terrorist? Who is the terrorist? Wanna know who, wanna know who is the terrorist?
Of course, around that same time, the political campaigns were in full swing. Republicans were having debates and preparing to figure out who was going to be their candidate to oppose the president. And I was listening to one of those Republican debates and was inspired to verse.
I turned on my TV, though it was hard to see these men who would be head of state. What a great country, from sea to shining sea, we watched the Republicans debate. Newt stood with his third wife and said, "You bet your life the president is a red. He wants to tax the rich a lot, take your limo and your yacht. He wants to have the bankers' heads. And if he gets in again, he'll beat the White House pink, and then he'll hire Chavez as his VP. Then we'll be right on track to give capitalism the sack, along with the insurance industry. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. He'll give everyone food stamps and wheelchair ramps. He'll subsidize windmills and maple syrup. He'll cripple industries with eco-friendly policies, and pretty soon we will be just like Europe. He'll shut down oil wells, give out solar cells to every home in Delaware and Illinois. He'll ban logging in the parks. He'll send the works of Karl Marx to the homes of every American girl and boy. He'll abolish pesticides. He'll be giving out free rides and free lunches too in his high-speed trains. He'll start lots of public works full of union perks. He'll fill all the cities up with bicycle lanes. If only it were were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. Watch out, his critics tell, this shall be our death knell. He'll pull the troops out and end all of our wars. He'll gut military spending, our empire will be ending, and soon we'll be invaded by the Moors. He'll legalize all drugs, give away beer mugs and hookahs to every child and Korans. He'll ban religions from the schools, give 40 acres and a mule to every person who makes less than 50 grand. He'll close Guantanamo, to torture he'll say no. He'll make us all drive electric cars. He'll reinstate the fairness doctrine, take off that damn flag pin, and he'll put Rupert Murdoch behind bars. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true.
Of course, they're having all these debates, and they're debating how to deal with the economic crisis, and whose fault it was, and how we got into this situation, all that. And of course, everybody in both parties, except for the most progressive fringe of the Democrats, is ignoring the elephant in the living room, the obvious solution.
$500 or so rich men in the Congress are engaged in some most serious debate, along with a few thousand lobbyists. They will now decide the world's fate. They say we're running out of dough, and the people all must take another hit. Well, there are some things that I know, and what they're saying is, I'm not a mathematician, but one doesn't have to be too deft to see if 1% of us owns half the wealth. That leaves 99% to share what's left. And then if 60 cents on each tax dollar is buying bombs to blow the planet into bits, then I think we need to grab them by the collar and patiently explain to them that that's tax the rich, tax the rich, close the loopholes so none of them can fudge it, bring 'em home, bring 'em home, and eliminate the military budget. They say we cannot pay for health care, nor for decent schools to educate the kids. Sorry if you don't have shoes to wear, but this recession has just left us in the skids. They say we can't afford those windmills after all, so just stiffen up and show a little grit. And if climate change and poverty have gotten you down, just sing, oh say, can you see? Tax the rich, tax the rich, close the loopholes so none of them can fudge it. Bring 'em home, bring 'em home, and eliminate the military budget. They say we've got to fight those terrorists. They say we've got to send our kids to war. Just ignore that corporation behind the flag and don't ask us what the hell they're fighting for. I hear GE is subsidized, leaving us fools to pay for it. They shirk their duties while we downsize. I know what that's called. Tax the rich, tax the rich. Close the loopholes so none of them can fudge it. Bring 'em home, bring 'em home, and eliminate the military budget. Tax the rich, tax the rich. Close the loopholes so none of them can fudge it. Bring 'em home, bring 'em home, and eliminate the military budget.
Meanwhile, so soon after the disaster in the Gulf, plans to build pipelines across North America continued.
As soon as they started drilling for oil, they started building pipelines on the seabed through the forests and across the border lines. As soon as they started laying the pipe, they said, we'll do this safely. There will never be an accident. We can do this carefully. But the sands shift, the ice melts, disasters are routine. Point out their record of destruction, and they'll say their hands are clean. Point out their woeful deeds, and they'll consult their banker and say it's safer to use a pipeline than an oil tanker. So now they want to see how far their madness it can go. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. The tar sands lie in the north, beneath Alberta's ground. As the price of oil rises, the oil men have found. Now there's profit to be made in a madman's dream by drilling deep beneath earth, blasting it with steam, bulldozing the land, melting what's inside. A record of extinction 1,000 miles wide. But laying waste to the northern plains is evidently not enough. The capitalists need markets where they can sell this toxic stuff. So across the farms and prairies, the oil now must flow. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. Governors oppose it, and every native band. Ranchers don't want it passing through their land. Union leaders have denounced it, as have the rank and file. The president delayed it for just a little while. They say you can't stop progress. I hope that isn't true, 'cause if we mine the tar sands, if we let the pipeline through, it will be a pipeline to oblivion, a pipeline to the end, a pipeline to a future with nothing round the bend, a pipeline to a future that I hope we'll never know. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. Pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico.
Meanwhile, in 2012, efforts to pass even more restrictive international copyright legislation that would have seen people going to prison for downloading songs in Europe, and as they already are occasionally here, I guess, or maybe not prison. Are they they're getting fined a hell of a lot. Thousands and thousands of people fined thousands of dollars by corporations, including people losing hundreds of thousands in lawsuits for just being a regular person downloading a few songs, uploading a few songs. But these measures, SOPA and PIPA and stuff, were defeated by massive protests throughout Europe and elsewhere.
People are marching against the chiefs of industry who are trying to protect their intellectual property. Secret negotiations to make a secret deal. They've got Warner Brothers, Sony, and the presidential seal. They say they lobby on behalf of you and me. I say, steal this MP3. 50 years ago, what some call the golden age, Indie FM was the king. The The world was a stage. Independent labels made records by the score. Enter 2012, now there are only 4. I've got words for these plutocrats who claim to represent me. Steal this MP3. In between commercials, they play nothing but the hits, and they hope to placate all of us with Lady Gaga's tits. They laid off all their staff before the PC was invented. Now they blame the world that their profits have been dented. The 1% is trying to get their fee. Steal this MP3. Steal it. The rich who line their pockets while the rest of us get screwed. It could all be a comedy if it weren't so crude. They want to arrest you for sharing knowledge, for violating copyright. To quote my friend Attila, these capitalists are a blight. They don't care about the culture, they just want your money. Steal this MP3. The people don't want censorship by that name or another. They don't want your files searched by corporate Big Brother. And if it's up to most of us, no one would sign your bill just so Hollywood and Pharma can make another mill. So from the Mekong Delta to the Mediterranean Sea, steal this MP3. 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 From the Mekong Delta to the Mediterranean Sea. Steal this MP3.
So now we are coming to an end of this show, which was focusing on songs I've written about 2010 to 2012. Next week at this time, Sunday, 11 a.m., December 29th, 11 a.m. Pacific time, I'll be doing a 2013 a musical review. And so I hope folks can join me then. And thanks for listening, everybody out there. And thanks for those of you who joined the chat room. And what else? You know, if anybody is listening in particular in Ireland, I'm going to Ireland in a couple of weeks, and we've got gigs in Belfast and Cork. But anywhere else, if anybody wants to organize a last-minute pub gig or house concert or something, anywhere in Ireland other than Belfast and Cork, let me know. And I'm also actively booking gigs for a tour in California in February, and Great Britain, as it is sometimes called, although I get in trouble when I say that. I shouldn't say that, right? England, Scotland, Wales. I'm going to be there in April, and continental Europe, as they say in Britain, or somewhere, I don't know, it's very complicated geography. I'll be in Germany, Switzerland, Scandinavia, and elsewhere in May, and I'm very much interested in booking more gigs if anybody's listening from any of those places. And if you happen to be a subscriber, your stuff is coming in the mail. We've been having a little family sweatshop here in Portland, and stuffing envelopes with T-shirts and CDs and all sorts of stuff, and that's all going out soon. And if anybody else wants to become a subscriber, that is very, very welcome by me and my landlord and hopefully other people. It's a scheme by which you send me money and I send you stuff and gratitude and a little laminated card giving you free access to any of my shows, which is something everybody needs in their wallet to impress their friends. And I will close with, it was definitely, as a chat room, yes, it was child labor indeed. I should be, except actually, I think apparently enslaving your own children is more or less legal. It's enslaving other people's children that is where the problems come in. Let's see, so 2012, back to there's one more song here, and 2012 saw the end of 2012 saw the beginning of a hunger strike in one of the many prisons in Israel where Palestinians are held indefinitely, detained indefinitely without trial and accused of all sorts of things. And the whole situation is, for many people, especially in the north of Ireland, very reminiscent of the north of Ireland during the Troubles. Many things reminiscent of that, and many relevant comparisons, and you'll find that very readily if you spend any time in Belfast or Derry. And I wrote this song actually using, pretty much the idea from an article in The Independent in England, but it was also a comparison many others had been making, most notably in the north of Ireland. And I'll close with this song, and hope to see folks next week for a musical review of 2013.
Khader Adnan grew up near Jenin City. You could say he was a product of his time. Ever since he was a kid, he'd get arrested, though he was never charged with any crime. Spending half his life in prison, a life lived like so many of his friends. Arbitrary and indefinite detention, never knowing if your jail time would end. Khader Adnan was arrested last December. Again, he wasn't told the reason why. He was shackled, he was beaten, he was tortured, there beneath the Middle Eastern sky. Perhaps there was a moment when he realized that right then with his body he'd say no. But from then on he refused to eat another meal, like in Belfast not many years ago. Khader Adnan grew up in a war zone, but all the tanks and planes were only on one side. It was a type of war that they call occupation, settlement, removal, fratricide. And anyone who talked about resistance, who thought they did not deserve to be a slave, would be looking down the barrel of a gun and often find themselves inside an early grave. Khader Adnan loves his wife and daughters, and he likes to eat his daily bread. But in prison he can't see his children or live life with the lady that he wed. So on behalf of all the children without fathers, he decided he had to strike a blow. He said, I will have dignity or death, like in Belfast not many years ago. Each time Khader Adnan was arrested, in prison he would learn a little more. And soon he became the teacher. And he'd talk about the times that came before. They talked about civil disobedience. They talked about the ballot and the gun. They talked about the occupied 6 counties and the H blocks in 1981. Khader Adnan talked of perseverance and how someday their people might be free. How someday they might hear their children laughing, unafraid how someday things could be. Then at 3:30 on one morning, the soldiers came, their rifles pointed low, and they took Khader Adnan from his family, like in Belfast not many years ago. They say Khader Adnan is a terrorist, just like they said of Bobby Sands, because he dares speak out against injustice, because he dares to make a stand, because he dares believe that he is human and he does not deserve to live this way, because he dares to consider an alternative, because he dares imagine a new day. Khader Adnan lost his liberty before he was born. To fight for life, its death he must embrace. But just like others come before him, there are others waiting to take his place. And even the great powers can lose interest in supporting such a vicious status quo, because you can't break a man who won't be broken, like in Belfast not many years ago. Like in Belfast not many years ago.